Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for choosing to come to this session. My name is Lucy Mills. So just by way of quick introduction, my company, Ready, we get sport ready for the future. So we advocate for and we create learning experiences about innovation, about emerging technologies like blockchain, AI, tech that is impacting our lives and indeed the sports industry. And we particularly focus on women's sport because of the digital gender gap and the gender disparities that exist in sport and in technology. And paradoxically, we also focus on women's sport because technology and social media and digital tools have been instrumental in the growth of women's sport, and that is just set to continue. So we want to make sure that women's sport are not getting left behind when it comes to tech and emerging tech. So that's why Ready exists. So it's the stuff we love. We demystify complex topics. We get to be students. We get to be creative and imaginative. We get to think about new solutions to sport, which is an industry that my team and I have been working in our whole lives. I was formerly at FC Barcelona. We're based in Barcelona in Spain. And yeah, it's the stuff we love. And so the topic for today, getting fit for the digital age. So there are lots of different areas that we could have focused on. Right? So we could have talked about digital transformation in sports organizations. We could have talked about the importance of data to measure programs. We could have talked about blockchain for governance and transparent processes for community-owned sports clubs. But one recurring topic, has kept coming up over the past few months in the Ready community, with our clients, with athletes, sports clubs, federations, and that's artificial intelligence, AI. It's a buzzword, it feels like it's everywhere, so we thought, let's do a session on AI. So this is an introduction to AI. What is artificial intelligence? So very simply, it's a field of systems and machines that is teaching these machines and systems to operate and to solve complex problems at the capacity or above what the human brain can do. And it's a multidisciplinary field. It spans science, mathematics, engineering, neuroscience, linguistics, philosophy. But it's really about, a key question, which has been a recurring question and theme that's been talked about over the past 60 years, ever since 1950. Many of you have probably seen the film, The Imitation Game. So mathematician Alan Turing, along with other scientists and technologists and mathematicians, were thinking about this question: can machines think? And so in the Alan Turing test, he was obsessed about this, and you can read more about it on the internet, and you can watch the film. But essentially, it was a very simple test with two respondents asking questions to these two respondents. One was a computer, and one was a human. And so Alan Turing thought, well, if you cannot tell the difference, then machines might have the ability to think. So that was the idea, and actually over the past decades, this idea has kind of progressed more into a reality. So in 1997, we had a supercomputer beat a world chess champion because that computer was able to learn, analyze, and process all of the patterns in chess and predict the next move much, much quicker than a human being. In 2011, we had a supercomputer then learned to understand language and respond and won $1 million on a TV quiz show. More recently, then we had supercomputers recognizing objects in images And even more recently, we now have computers learning physical environments in the form of robots and being used in bomb squads, air forces, and so on. So quick history of where AI has come from. So why all of a sudden are we in this AI boom, which we are in an AI boom and everyone's talking about it, but why? So there are three main ingredients as to why everyone is going on about it, and it's because, for three things, simplifying. First of all, big data. So big data is this ability to store and process lots and lots of complex data. All of us are creating data and putting it out there on the internet every day. Think about our digital footprint, our emails, the songs we upload, the videos, the messages, the trackers. All of this information is available for AI systems to extract information and use. Secondly, cloud computing. So this is the accessibility of super hyper sophisticated computers that otherwise would have been kept in big storages and used by a small number of people. But now we, everyday people, can access these incredible supercomputers to fit our needs. So we pay for what we use. And this is a very low-cost, scalable, accessible thing. We might pay for a Google Drive or right? So increased availability of powerful computer resources at our fingertips. And thirdly, deep learning models. So we won't get too technical in this session, but essentially it's about teaching machines to do certain things. And I'll get onto that in a minute. What makes a computer or a machine or a system intelligent? So there are different types of AI which we can categorize based on the type of function that they perform. So some of them, and actually you'll think, oh, I am using that in my day-to-day life, and I didn't realize. So natural language processing, so understanding text, written information like chatbots on websites, computer vision, so facial recognition, speech recognition, so computers identifying what people are saying, so like Siri, Alexa, recommender systems, so these are used in things like Netflix, where you get things popping up based on your interests, expert systems, so making rapid decisions online based on a set of data, for example, with automated bank loans, robotics, as we talked about before, so computers that can interact spatially with the physical environment, and then generative AI, which we've talked a lot of, which we've heard a lot about now, which is creating and generating new content based on text, image, sound, and so on. So AI is deemed intelligent. There are different ways that make AI intelligent, and one of them that we've probably heard about is machine learning. So it's one of the techniques and methods that makes AI systems, makes AI systems intelligent. So I think I'll pass that. So we talked about AI systems. Machine learning is a type of an approach to making a system intelligent. And what that means is that we have algorithms. So algorithms are instructions. So we tell a computer to do something, and then with the data, so the ingredients, and then to produce an outcome, right? Very simple. We will pass this. And so this links to deep learning. So these are the most powerful algorithms that exist, and actually they're designed to mimic the human brain. So recognizing speech and listening to something, interpreting things. And so these powerful algorithms are called deep neural networks. And this is the third You know, the combination of why we're in this AI boom right now is because of this ability for computers to learn in ways that the human brain does. I must say that we're in this AI boom right now, but we have had periods of stagnation of development because there are incredible ideas and scientists and coders and, you know, big tech giants thinking up these ideas, but they outpace the development of the software, the hardware, and so on. So in these periods, it's called AI winter, which is essentially not a lot happening. We can't progress with an idea. And then right now we're in an AI boom because of those three reasons. And we're seeing a lot of development. And probably in the future, there will be another stagnating bit. So recap. Is everyone still following? Yes. Cool. So AI dates back to Alan Turing, 1950. We've seen iterations and developments over the past decades, examples of AI doing specific functions. This is narrow AI. Okay, so some of us have probably had this fear-mongering that AI is going to take over the world, and that doesn't exist. That's just in Hollywood. Because right now, AI systems are very specific and they perform one task. It might be that you have a system that can do 2 or 3 different things, but it's not a human brain that has the capacity to do all of those different types of things at the same time. So fear not. Interdisciplinary field, replicating human-like decision-making and problem-solving across these wide range of tasks. Different ways to train systems, to make them intelligent, including machine learning. So that hopefully gives you an introduction to what AI is, where it comes from, how we define AI, and the types of AI that exists. And actually, you're using AI-powered systems all the time, so let's not be scared of it. We've seen some tangible examples of different functionalities that we can all use in our day-to-day lives, but of course, along with the hype and the buzz and the AI boom that we're in now, you've read news, I'm sure, you've seen posts on LinkedIn, you've had conversations with friends. The first thing some friends are like, oh, the robots are taking over. So there's a lot of, quite rightly, concerns and risk and challenges, and AI ethics has become an increasing space that I think we should all start to tune into as we use these tools. So I'm going to run through just a few of the concerns and challenges, and some of them we have answers to, some of them we don't, and the space is evolving so rapidly that regulation is struggling to keep up with the innovations that are taking place right now. So at Ready, we always say we're not like pushing AI or Web3 in people's, we're saying let's learn about them, let's be informed so that then we can better understand how these technologies affect ourselves, our sports, our organizations, and our participants as well. So one of the big issues with AI is this thing called explainability. And so some of you have probably heard this term, the black box. So essentially, we're using algorithms to train models to do certain things and have certain outcomes, right? So whether it's predicting data or extracting data or creating something new, the most simplest thing is that we put instructions in and something pops out. And what on earth is going on in the middle, right? So this is explainability. It's a very common term in AI ethics because without this explainability, there can be skepticism, quite rightly. And when you get to very important fields, think about the example I mentioned before, the bank loans. How was that decision made? Or doctors using AI for certain medical diagnoses and having AI support them. So actually, it becomes very, very critical if we don't fully understand the decision-making of that AI system. So explaining the decisions helps with trust, helps with transparency, And so that's just quite a big issue, and I think you guys touched on it as well in some of your examples. The next one, I think is super relevant for this audience, are the biases that can be reproduced through AI systems. Why? So AI is, I would say, there aren't engineers and developers who are with their own biases necessarily, but they're creating models that are taught to extract information, to analyze information, and collate and gather data from society, from historical records, from data that's out there. And of course, we all know that there are underrepresented groups in society who are written out of certain literature, art, different fields, science. There's a dominance of white men in the data, and in the population is represented in the data. And so actually, the AI models are taking those records, and then there's a risk. And so that's why we have to be really conscious, actually, of what kind of data is being used and analyzed. And so it can happen with language. So there's some like dark humor examples of when you put in an example about the role of men and the role of women, that it spills out stereotypes because they're everywhere in society. Image recognition, so AI systems are more likely to detect paler faces because there are less non-white faces in the historical and data records, and things like in advertising as well. So if you're a certain person with a certain identity characteristic, there will be algorithms that show specific things to you, and they could be repeating stereotypes that actually limit your exposure, opportunity, and so on, so in hiring and job applications and things like that. So really important to just be aware of that. We've probably heard a lot about this as well, and it's a huge challenge. There's privacy and IP concerns as well. So deepfakes, misinformation, manipulation of images, and influencing. So we've heard of influencing elections and political decisions and so on. And just privacy concerns of using information that's actually not yours and you don't have the IP and the rights to. AI privatization, so before I talked about the big tech giants who are developing these technologies, there's a dominance of AI development in the AI boom that we are in right now by the big tech giants. So what does that mean? Does that mean that there's a monopoly on these developments? Does it mean that, what are the development teams looking like? What's the global perspective looking like? And so, how diverse is the AI development space that we're in right now? So some of the answers, and there's other concerns, so around replacing jobs, regulation, and we don't really have time today, but there are so many concerns out there that I encourage you to look at AI ethics, look at the different concerns, and see how relevant they are to you in your work. On a more positive note, some of the things that are actively happening right now in this space to overcome biases, to be more representative of society. So data collection, and I'm going to do a quick session on AI in sport. This is really relevant for sport, and I'll come to that later. So when we're collecting data, just making sure that there are diverse samples from the entire population that are being included in these studies. We know that a lot of studies, science studies, trials the sample sizes are quite narrow, and this contributes to biases. Hiring diverse teams, having independent evaluation. So these are things that intuitively, in our sector, we're quite aware of, right? So kind of principles of inclusion and being intentional. And then feedback mechanisms. And then there are these power imbalances that I talked about. So making these technologies open source so that smaller firms, startups, academic institutions can access resources and further the development of this space. And then regulatory measures. So governments are scrapping right now what to do. But there are ethical frameworks and there are things that are being developed that can help push on regulation so that it catches up with the pace of AI development. And then education and training, which is also, we're all here. So many people have showed up. Like, what on earth is this AI thing? What is it? How are we seeing it in our daily lives? How can it be useful? What things should we be concerned about? Let's take that back to our organizations. So really, really important, particularly among underrepresented groups. And why I say that is because there's a huge opportunity with emerging technologies like AI to democratize and to make more accessible and with less resources certain impactful things. And I think this is really telling in sport. So I'm going to move on to AI in sport, which I think we have a shared interest in seeing some of the ways that we're seeing AI in sport today. So, of course, as we know, the past 20 years, we have seen a commercialization, a digitalization, a globalization of professional sport in particular. And in the professional sports realms, there's a lot of talk about sport being data-driven. Who's heard that term? Like data-driven sport, data-driven this. Yeah. So, and a lot of people are like, what on earth does that even mean? And the curious thing is that without data, there is no AI. And that is something that really resonated with me. It's like, and like hold that thought as we go through the different ways that we see AI in sport today. So at Ready, we roughly break down the different ways that we see AI in sport according to the following. So athlete performance, on the sports field, in the arena, in the game, sport business, so management, partnerships, operations, and then fan experiences. So fans are the biggest stakeholder group in sport. We know that over the last 20 years, technology has and continues to revolutionize and change the way that fans engage with sports. It's becoming more and more two-way, more interactional, more intimate with sports, particularly among Gen Z fans who they're watching the game and they've got the handsets and they want to know the stats, and it's kind of dynamic and fluid for lots of different factors, which is another topic entirely. But we're going to go through some of these, some examples with specific cases within sport. I know this is professional sport. I hope there's an interest here to kind of look at these different case studies. We will then go into how it might be relevant, how some of these things might be relevant for grassroots sport, sport for development, and us as practitioners. So, athlete performance. Lots of different ways that we're seeing AI in sport today, and I'll just go through some of them. So, analysis of athlete performance. AI systems are able to collect and analyze huge quantities of data. And so there are, I'll just use this example here. This PlayerMaker AI wearable tracker was approved by FIFA this year. It's actually strapped to the football boots that tracks the movements, the agility, the speed, the kicking, all of that, and collects that information. And what that does is that can help athletes better understand their movements, their performance. I think this is interesting because there's a loose correlation of bigger budgets in professional sport correlating to better sports performances. So those clubs that have endless money, millions and millions, vamos, let's go, they generally at the top of the leagues, the top performing, they can provide their athletes with all the different support that they need to perform at their best. Tools like this enable smaller, less resourced clubs, organizations to access whole loads of data that would have otherwise taken an individual 3 weeks to go through and to collate and so on. So there's a way of democratizing sophisticated data models around athlete performance here. There's no AI without data. In women's sport, I just wanted to highlight a couple of examples here. So only 4 to 8% of sports science research exclusively focuses on women athletes. This is problematic. So if women's sport wants to grow, we need more data. This is a shout out to all of you working in women's sport. We need more data on women athletes. We need more data on women's sport fans. Because ultimately we have tools available that can support the growth of performance and sponsorship and get onto the business side, but the pool is lacking right now. There are a couple of really cool examples, Wild AI and Zone 7, that help women athletes, both from their, collecting data from their own bodies, but also using external data to help them with injury prevention, prediction, recovery, training loads through the menstrual cycle, taking into consideration a whole load of different data points. Same with the FA Women's Super League, the professional league in the UK, in England, sorry. They are increasingly using these wearable trackers with women professional footballers that is helping them with their performance. And I think this is a really interesting area around injury prevention, particularly when women's sports organizations are under-resourced. They don't always have the physiologists, the sports scientists, the nutritionists, the so on. So these types of tools are really, really helping. Again, this is kind of on an NFL level with a sport that has high possibility of injury. There's a digital athlete that simulates real athletes, and so it looks at a whole load of really interesting data, environmental conditions, playing surface, who they're playing against, how the physical body is for that particular game to try to mediate and moderate injury. Competition strategies. So this is NBA. They have this thing called the Cognitive Operations Center. Again, fascinating. Use of data in incredible ways. It helps coaches and management teams to think about, okay, who am I going to play in which position for which game, because this player historically performed like this against this team or in this position, or this player's a bit injured. So, and that actually helped. And this Cognitive Operations Center in the NBA actually helped them win a title a couple of years ago. And so it's a really interesting case study to look at. I know I'm flying through this, but hopefully there's case studies that you're interested in. You can go back to them. Scouting and recruitment is a really interesting area. Again, scouting is subjective. It's based on individuals. I was working at a professional football club. My scouting mates are the ones with like the hoods up and mysterious and notes and so on. So they are looking at players and data and all of the time. And there are officiating tools out there that can support them with the legwork that would otherwise take weeks for them to use. So it can help with making recruitment more efficient, and also thinking about hiring and recruiting for specific teams as well, which is also interesting. Will that player fit within that specific team, or what's the likelihood of a good fit? Equipment design, I think this is another exciting area, the digital athlete that we talked about. They've been making helmets that reduce concussion. We have AI-infused running shoes that adapt the level of cushioning, AI-powered bikes that utilize GPS and traffic data, so we're quite familiar with that. And then, lovely contested one. So many fans, the VAR system is hotly contested because it's supposed to be used to help with accuracy of decisions, but then people think actually it takes out maybe the human emotion and that side of the sport. So again, Hawkeye is used in tennis, and there's a lot of debate about the role of AI empowering and supporting refereeing decisions. Next one, so sport business. So if you think about all the back end, the operations, efficiencies, and I've got a few examples here. So stadiums and match days, for those of you working at sports clubs, there's increasingly, AI is all over the place to support different functions, automated ticketing, assisted facial recognition to help to get people into the grounds quicker. There's AI functions that can track the flow of people around a stadium so that the food and merchandise and the different offerings are more, there's a better flow, that they can get to the people in better ways and therefore increase revenue. Sponsorship and marketing. So there's interesting AI models that can tell marketers, advertisers, when the optimum exposure and engagement is on match days. Of course, then sports clubs can lean into that and build out better, more targeted propositions for sponsors. An area that's really exciting here is around, and I think we talked about this in the esports session actually, monitoring social media channels and fan reactions. So there's a brilliant company called Areto Labs, and they have an AI model that sports clubs use to detect and eliminate homophobia, racism, transphobia, sexism on their social media channels. So they started that because that's what they were passionate about, online, like eradicating online hate. But what they realized is, through rolling that out with lots of different sports clubs, is that what they were doing was building more positive online communities. So engagement shot up across all the clubs that they're working with. So now there's a direct commercial return on having less abuse, online abuse on social media channels. So that's an interesting space that we're seeing more and more. And then, as I mentioned before, particularly Gen Z fans, they have multiple sources. They're not going to the grounds necessarily because maybe they're not affordable or there's not the entertainment factor, but there's so much more data and analysis and commentary that happens that is great for fans, and also therefore it's great for business. So Fox Sports has done this. They've gone back into their archives and they've looked at these like cool images and videos and all of that, and they brought that into, and they can use that in the modern day. And then AI is a booming space. Technology is a booming space. There's money, there's sponsorship, there's partnerships available here because, and this is what my company, we see, and we actually are involved in this, is that a lot of tech companies, blockchain companies, AI companies, they're interested in aligning with, particularly women's sport, because it's an uncluttered market, because they want to test their solutions in quite a cheap way. And therefore, so there are partnership opportunities. So we've got a couple of really interesting sponsorship case studies where they bring their technology, they try the solutions, in this case, Abby, to help with efficiencies across the club operations. And there's also funding for corporate social responsibility and outreach around tech education. And then the Women's American Football League in the US, they've also got an AI company partnership, and they're activating that through their leagues of 60 teams and 2,000 players. The last one, so again, thinking more from a fan-centric perspective, I mentioned this, but the fact that AI systems can analyze and look at thousands of pieces of data and synthesize them and provide predictions. So at the Masters golf tournament, they have this American Henry, which is a commentator at every golf hole. And so fans of golf can now have just amazing historical insights, and then they can predict what that player will do at that hole because they've gone through 200,000 shots, or the entire kind of 6 years of data, and it's updated after every shot. And so that can help commentators, human commentators, and there's a nice coexistence there. Same thing at tennis, there's AI-powered commentary, and also in France at the Roland Garros Open, they actually incorporated some fan offerings on the mobile phone with augmented reality, so you could swivel the phone around and then you could get stats from that particular position on the court and things like that. So just giving fans more of a dynamic, fact-based experience of the sport. And lastly, this happened over the summer in the FIFA Women's World Cup. It was an AI-powered all-star league where fans could generate their own players, outfits, compete in the league. And we see a lot of that in men's sport. And actually, this is one of the first examples that we saw in women's sport. So just put that in there. So, super quick rundown of all of the different ways that we're seeing AI in sport. Yes, weighted towards professional sport, with quite a lot of inclusion of women's sport, from an athlete performance perspective, from business, management, operations perspective, and from a fan perspective. So like a lot of us in the room, maybe we're working for grassroots organizations, NGOs, federations, community groups, clubs. So I would just love to just throw it back to you guys and to just reflect. Is there anything, I'm not going to make you stand up or anything, but just have a think about, are there anything from that presentation, from a player's perspective, from an injury prevention, from a supporting with data, from maybe partnerships, maybe we want help with piloting some technology, and so just think about that for your own organizations. So firstly, us as practitioners, we have a responsibility to our organizations and to our participants. Our participants, many of them are young people. I know there's people working with older people as well, but actually everybody is affected and impacted and is using, with or without really realizing, technologies like AI. So I would encourage all of you to take a course on AI in sport by my company that's being launched this month. It's free. Why is it free? Because we want to make this education accessible. It's introductory. It goes into a lot more detail, the technical aspects of machine learning and algorithms and deep neural networks. If that's interesting for you, check out Ready. We also have we have another course on Web3, blockchain, and we do a lot of this kind of curated education for practitioners in sport and sport for development, because we know it's an underserved area. To Markus and Julia's point, experiment with the tools. There are lots out there. We just did some exercises. we can all just like have a go. And maybe we hate it, and that's absolutely fine. Maybe we know that, oh, actually, our comms person, it might help them because they're overstretched and they've got so much to do. So experiment with the tools. Think about, as I said before, different ways that it might impact in your sport or not. And then young people in our programs, and we talk about this a lot, that young people are digitally native, they're digitally savvy, they engage with sport in new and different ways. We were in a fascinating session before on gaming, and you know, it's a space that I think us as, I'm 40 next year, so we're like 20 years away from the Gen Z and more, is actually understanding the realities and the experiences of young people. And there's an opportunity to educate on ethics, on good use, on engaging with these tools, and we can incorporate them in our programs. So here's to an exciting AI-powered future. Who's ready?